I maybe it's because we're close to it and we've been on the front lines of it all. But I can't think of a club going into a season less prepared than what Wednesday are now, in terms of the entire package. And at least it's a really easy, simple first game. Leicester away, no problems there, is there? Hello and welcome to another edition of All Wednesday. We are on YouTube now, so if you're watching on there, that's great. If you're watching it on Daily Motion, you can head over to YouTube as well. We've got Alex Miller with us again today because we just need news, Alex, and you're the news guy. So we're coming to you to chat about everything that's happening. Um, where are we at? It feels like not much has changed in the last week since we spoke, but also everything has changed in the last week. So, with Wednesday's situation now, we aren't really any the wiser, are we, in terms of the going forward side of things at the moment?
Uh, no, thank you for the introduction, by the way, Joe. Yeah, not sure about that. But yeah, things moving forward. Um, we don't know what we don't know. But certainly with the season, what a tick over 2 weeks away. You'd like things to be moving forward with more pace.
Yeah,
Certainly from what we're aware of, and um, yeah, in terms of takeover stuff, any incoming transfers, this, that, and the other, um, things are sort of on the go slow, as far as we're aware.
yeah,
And I will keep stressing that. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a mountain of um, negativity around Wednesday, and you know, inevitably with everything that's gone on. Concerns around being able to use the full breadth of the stadium. I mean,
yeah,
that's been something that's been rumbling along for a long time, but it just serves as yet another um, serious failing from the very top of the club, and um, it just feels like Wednesday fans, ourselves covering the club, it's just a constant battering and banging your head against the wall, and it's been obviously spread across the breadth of a summer where usually football's quite exciting and you're sort of alive with um, the feeling of possibility as to what could happen.
yeah. Because I always say at the start of every season, it doesn't really matter how things have gone, who you've signed. There's always that right at the start of the season, there's always that, like, almost, like, blind optimism that every club seems to have, of, "Oh, well, we might do alright, yeah," like, you never know how these new signs are gonna play out and stuff. This could be the first time that that is not true, and not even in the slightest, because I don't think I've ever seen, um, worse odds on a team finishing bottom before, not even in the bottom 3, like, finishing bottom of the table, and it just doesn't feel like there's anything to be positive about. Like, I mean, if people are really look like scratching for stuff, you could say, oh well, it could be an interesting year because there could be quite a lot of Sheffield Wednesday academy players on show. Um, and yes, seeing young players come through your club is great. Not so much in these circumstances, right?
Yeah, and look, if you were to look at it with a glass half full, and it would take a bit of a squint and maybe a head tilt and a real effort to get there. Um, that would be the positive, I guess. That I think there are going to be some players. Look, Wednesday can still sign players on frees and no fee loans. Whether they're in a position to do that, we gather that the recruitment team have sort of been working throughout the summer on drawing up lists of targets, and you'd hope that conversations are ongoing. As and when Wednesday are able to get into a position to strengthen the squad. Um, but as we said, as far as our understanding is, I'm not expecting anything to drop anytime soon. So you are looking at the opening weeks of the season, certainly with a lot of young players involved. Um, be that probably on the bench to begin with, but certainly involved. I mean, earlier this week I drew up a potential starting 11, um, and look, you'd like it to be stronger, but it could win championship points. It's full of um, players with lots of championship games under their belt. It's got some experience in there. It's got some quality in there. The concern is, you've taken a lot of goals out of the side. In the four attacking players that have left in the last couple of weeks. Let alone the players that moved on. Um, as per the retained and released list earlier in the summer. Um, and yeah, the concerns are there in terms of depth and what's behind these players. So work
Yeah,
does need to be done once they need to get themselves into a position to get some deals done. Um, every team starts on 0 points. Whether that'll be the case with Wednesday will remain to be seen. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you're really clutching, look, this is a Wednesday. This is a club that in the last few years has made a habit on bashing the odds a little bit and
yeah.
achieving things that people didn't think possible. So, with an optimist hat on, that's what I'd be looking at.
Yeah, I think like you say, it's the actual starting 11, the best starting 11 is a pretty solid starting 11. It's not gonna go win the championship or anything like that. But it's what's beyond that, and it's as soon as any of those start to drop away, whether that be injuries, whether it be more departures, suspensions, all that kind of stuff. And I think that is the more concerning thing is it does feel like Wednesday, as things stand now, are going to be so incredibly reliant on a group of lads that have had no championship experience, and that's obviously not a nice place to be in for the club, but also for them. Like you don't want to be thrown to the wolves sort of thing, and that is sort of what could potentially happen here. I mean, we you speak there about incomings, and the only one we have any idea about is Mohamed Konate, who is I would probably say not anywhere near being a first team starter yet. He's a young lad from the Ivory Coast who has been part of the squad for a few weeks now, who Wednesday even talks about potentially signing. But other than that, it's all very quiet on the transfer front, and it's understandable given the scenario. I mean, Wednesday are still under embargo; the fee restrictions are still in place, and you would think that before any of that can start happening in terms of signings, Wednesday need to get their house in order, don't they?
They do. I mean, you can two of the names, certainly one of the names worth talking about in terms of that 11 that was put together and put out on the Star earlier this week. Um, you'd expect, I think, still Barry Bannon to be involved this season. Time is ticking, and certainly I'm sure that both club and player would have wanted to be in a position to sort things out by now. Um, but he's still very much involved, as we understand it, and has trained this week. Um, and the other one's Callum Patterson, who you led on that one. Still being a possibility to re-sign, and that level of experience and the influence that two experienced Scotland internationals and all the rest of it. That would be a big plus and would reshape how the squad is viewed. But
Mhm.
there's a great deal of work I think that needs to be done. Um, so we'll see. Hopefully, there's some shiny positive news to come. But we've been waiting a long time for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I did get to write a story today about Andy Sharp, who did a really good job with Wednesday's under-18s last year in particular. We saw the breakouts, I suppose, of players like Will Granger and Caelan Cole Kadamatu, who's obviously moved on to Manchester City now for what I think is it's about 1.5 million quid, which I think there's been this idea of it being like a cut price deal, and that Wednesday have lost them because of the situation that they're in. I think it's probably important to say that's not really the case, is it? Like that is a for a 15-year-old kid with undoubted, potential. We know that. But 1.5 million for a player that would ultimately have gone anyway because you can't do anything about it. That's the way that the academy structure works in England. I'd say rightly or wrongly, but it is very much wrongly. Um, that is the way it works. And if it had gone to tribunal, he wasn't going to be able to sign a pro deal till he was 17 anyway. I think it's probably important to say that 1.5 million for a 15-year-old is good business. I think if you take away the situation that Wednesday are in, it's a good piece of work that Wednesday have done. It's another, I suppose, a feather in the cap of the academy, and it's a good chunk of money that goes towards, well, should in usual circumstances go towards um, funding the academy going forward. I think the problem that people have is that this money is effectively going to pay people's wages, and that doesn't really sit right, does it?
No, it doesn't. And look, like you say, the fact that because there were big money advance. I mean, you've been across the Calum story far better and in more detail than I have, but um, you know, approaches, seven-figure approaches were and have been rejected previously. So where the motivation is on selling Kalen this time, um, is up for question. And like you say, that it feels from the outside looking in like that cash probably gets swallowed up quite quickly by running costs and stuff. So yeah, you're right. At the same time, 1.5 million with the way that the football system is set up for a 15-year-old kid is good business. And like you say, it should be all credit really to everyone that's played a part in Kalen's development to date. It sounds like there's been eyes on him for a long time. Um, and more power to him. And I think we'll all be looking on with interest as to how he goes on. I've been lucky enough to spend a couple of afternoons at the training complex at Man City, and my days, it's a different world. It's a different world.
Yeah.
So coupled with the coaching and the facilities and resources that he's going to be um, the beneficiary of, yeah, good luck to him, and I think everyone will be keen to see him go on and achieve great things.
Yeah. So the reason I got onto speaking like Kalen there was because of Andy Sharp. I completely went off on a tangent. Um, Andy Sharp's going to be promoted to the head of academy coaching. Daryl Pugh, who's been at the club a long time, is leaving, and Andy's going to step up into that role. Andy, we've had him on the show. Speaks really, really well. Fascinating guy with some really great ideas. You can go and find that on the YouTube channel if you want to go watch that. But yeah, Andy stepping up is it feels like a really good move. He's very very well liked, very well respected within the setup. It's also going to be Jordan Broadbent stepping up into the under-18 manager role, and Jordan is another one who's very highly regarded, and he's been on TV and all sorts.
Yeah, yeah, and look, it's all a bit doom and gloom, isn't it, on these shows and on our website homepage and social media and everything else. But for such a long time, there has been chatter around the academy and not bringing so many players through. And look, there's circumstances to that. Not long ago, Sheffield Wednesday was spending a lot of money with a view to getting into the Premier League and ended up with a lot of experienced players on long contracts. Well, that makes it more difficult for young
Yeah,
players to be given opportunities. That there's a lot of stuff here, and I'm not decrying for a second any of the work that was done previously in the academy in years gone by. It just didn't feel like the club was in a place where it was set up for young players to come in and really kick on.
there was no real pathway, was there?
Yeah, yeah, potentially not. Look, we saw before my time covering the club that Jos Lukai brought some players through, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of those players haven't gone on to set the world on fire in the EFL or what have you. Um, but what we have seen, I think, certainly with Danny coming to the club, and we know the culture in Germany in terms of trusting young players is more players given opportunities. You
Mm,
look at Pierce Charles is obviously a remarkable talent. You look at how quickly Bailey Cadamartri was born brought in again a needs must situation, but was brought in within weeks of Danny joining the club and given a really important role. As I said, Pierce is. I think he's got the world at his feet, and the more people I speak to about Pierce, the more excited I get. You know, it it just feels like
Mm,
he's a potential superstar in the making. Um, Gab Otegbayo, excuse me, has been thrown into some real important situations,
mm,
and he's had his ups and downs, but he'll be one of the young players looking at this season thinking, well, I can make a real go of it. Sean Facera, all these players that are in and around it, and we know again you're far better across the youth stuff than I am, but there are some exciting names in those junior ranks as well. So there's a lot to be upset and angry, frankly, about with the way
yeah.
that Sheffield Wednesday is at the minute. But again, if you were to squint and tilt your head and look for positives, it would be that perhaps that culture continues. Whoever's manager, it's worth saying. In terms of the opportunities that might come up.
Yeah, I think you touched on the manager situation there. It just feels like another element of Sheffield Wednesday that needed more decisiveness and hasn't had any. And I think that is something that I think has been a plague throughout Wednesday for quite a while now, is that lack of decisiveness in terms of when to offer players new contracts, when to make a decision on a manager, um, when to inform people that they might not get paid for the month. Just a lack of uh, yeah, I think decisiveness is the only way I can put it, and I think that that's what's sort of hurting the club now from a managerial perspective, is that everyone knows what's been said, everyone knows what is potentially on the cards going forward, but because the chairman has not come forward and said anything and addressed the situation, it's just left to swirl into madness, isn't it?
Yeah, and let's see what happens. Like you say, the situation surrounding Henrik Pedersen's return to the club is pretty well known. Um, been having a couple of chats over the last couple of days, and sort of the question is there. Who do you think will be in the dugout come Leicester? And um, I'm siding with Danny Rowe because he's the man in the seat. And while things aren't sorted out in terms of um, any exit route or anything like that, I gather that he's spoken to people within the club and has spoken about a desire to continue as manager. That is a healthy U-turn from certain points in the last months. So let's wait and see what happens.
Yeah,
And I think it is some suggestions that it's wrapped up in the conversations back and forth with Chansiri and his representatives and Danny and his representatives. Let's wait and see. It's it's an impossible, when things are at that level, it's impossible to really give any sort of insight. You can only operate on the whispers that you get from around the whole thing. And I think personally, the longer it goes on, the longer I think that Danny will take the dugout early on in the season. But again, there's a fair bit of hunch to that. That there's certainly enough chatter around to suggest that might not be the case.
yeah. I was looking this week. I know you did your story on the strongest 11 or the best 11 that Wednesday could put out, should we say. I was looking through the training gallery that the club posted this week, just to sort of see who's in the door, sort of thing. I think I counted 22 players in total, and that includes four goalkeepers, none of which are over the age of 21, I don't think. Um, I think there's 10 players who are over the age of 21 in general, and one of those is obviously Deshaun Bernard, who we don't actually know when Dish is going to be sort of ready to go again. Obviously, he had that bad injury last year. Um, Wednesday's training sessions look a little bit more sparse, don't they? We've seen obviously Danny and Henrik, but Andy Holdsworth and Giles Coke have been involved in training sessions as well. It's quite a it's quite a come down, isn't it, from the size of the technical team that was there last season, the size of the squad that was there last season. Um, the technical team in general is another thing that needs work, isn't it? Because it's one thing having a trimmed down technical team, but right now Wednesday are running on a manager, an assistant, and a couple of bits and bats that have been pulled in from elsewhere.
Yeah, and from what we can gather, yeah, Andy Holdsworth and Giles Coke are popular figures, but ultimately, at some point they'll be needed elsewhere. Like what happens to
You
the
have to do
21?
their actual real life jobs that they're
Yeah,
paid to do.
what happens with the 21s?
Yeah.
Their season's going to start soon. I think it starts a little bit later, doesn't it,
Mm.
than the senior team? While there is a degree of uncertainty over who the manager's going to be, who picks the coaching staff, who all this sort of stuff. So yeah, look, uncertainty has been one of the buzzwords, one of the more polite buzzwords, I think, from Sheffield Wednesday's perspective this summer. Um, and it just rolls on and on and on. I'd love for us both to be sat here, just regaling all these. Our understanding is that this will happen, and this is what will happen when, and this is when
Yeah.
players are going to come in, and this is. But it's just impossible at the minute. That there's very little coming out of the club. In terms of the conversations that we're having. Not that I want to speak to you, Joe, but uncertainty is still there. And while that was a problem 8 weeks ago,
Mm.
my days, I'm going to be on a train to Leicester in the blink of
Yeah.
an eye, and who knows what we're going to be faced with.
I was literally having a conversation this morning about Wednesday's current state, and I maybe it's because 'cause we're close to it and we've been on the front lines of it all, but I can't think of a club going into a season less prepared than what Wednesday are now, in terms of the entire package. And, at least it's a really easy, simple first game, Leicester away. No problems there, is there?
Um, yeah. One of the title favourites, aren't they? And I'm sure in the coming couple of weeks we'll have a big chat to preview that game. But it is sort of sat over the horizon. Um, they've got a friendly this weekend, haven't they? That's probably worth mentioning.
Yeah,
Um, Against Mansfield, that's going to be behind closed doors. That's to us as well as supporters. The coverage of that will be very limited. And I'd imagine that they're trying to sort out maybe one or two others. Um, but as far as we're concerned, it will remain behind closed doors, and the first look at them that we or anyone else gets will be against Leicester. So that's going to be a bizarre thing as well. But
yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
I mean, the first chat with Danny Röhl is probably gonna come, or again, have to caveat everything, or someone else will probably come just before that game. Uh, at least Wednesday were unbeaten in pre-season. Victory over Manchester City's under-23s and beating York City. We've got to look at some of the positives, Alex. They're not. It's not all bad.
HMS book the hotel. Is that what we're going for?
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, on that happy note, Sheffield Wednesday unbeaten in pre-season. We will leave you to the rest of your day. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.